Hello and welcome to the official podcast of Palate Exposure, featuring Ilona Thompson, a podcast for those seeking the ultimate in wine, food, and travel. Each week she interviews winemakers, chefs, celebrities, and a variety of guests that shape the way we enjoy life.
That was just an amazing, I will forever be thankful for that and that opportunity. And, I think it's just, he kind of exemplifies maybe the best of the valley in that respect, about understanding that as winemakers, we're not just the heads of manufacturing business. We're also extremely creatively and inspired, and rather than trying to keep people in a cage, like letting them grow. And I think his wines reflect that. And
it was a smart business decision, but it's also a good human decision. So I'm going to raise a glass of your beautiful rosé that I've been staring at longingly, to Cliff Lady.
Yes.
Who's not only an outstanding vintner, but also, like I said, a great mentor and a good human.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Cheers to Cliff.
Cheers. So we're drinking rosé.
Right. So when I was at Cliff Lady, I was not making rosé. I am making rosé now, though. So this is a 2017 rosé of Grenache. Extremely light. I make this by basically taking the top cluster for rosé and taking the bottom cluster for red. So I'll harvest this right around 20 bricks, right after veraison, right after the grapes turn from green to red, and whole cluster press this, just like if I was making like a Sauvignon Blanc or something. Press it extremely lightly on a sparkling cycle, and do an extremely low and slow fermentation, low temperature, long time, in a concrete egg. So
very cool.
Concrete fermented rosé of Grenache, so kind of Provençal inspired, if you will.
Yes, no, the color is very light.
Yeah,
really
very
pale.
Light in color, very, very pale.
And a lot of stone fruit, a lot of minerality on the nose. Very savory nose.
Yes. So this is, there's no sugar. It's bone dry.
Yeah.
Quite a bit of acid. I mean, on the level of, sparkling wine acidity. Really low pH. No malolactic fermentation. So the idea is to be fresh.
It is. It's almost like European-esque in that sense.
Yeah.
It's not kind of pretty, candied effort. This really, to me, feels very serious. Not weighty. I mean, it's got a very light touch on the palate. It's got great texture, but it's more on the savory side. And I absolutely despise the term food wine, but I'm about to use it because this is just, my mouth is watering right now. This would pair with a whole lot of stuff.
Well, it's a pretty warm day too today, warm and sunny. I mean, it's a rosé kind of day. I mean, this is very low alcohol. I mean, you can drink a half a bottle of this and still feel fresh and not at all bogged down or tired or anything.
No, this is very purposeful to me.
Yeah.
What you just described. This is a wine that you can come home to, relax, sit down on your porch or whatever, pour a glass, and before you know it, a couple of bottles can be gone.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, this is meant to, you can have it with food or not, but it's meant to leave your palate cleansed and feeling refreshed.
Yeah.
And it has a completely different tool in the tool belt of all of the red wines, for instance. I mean, it's very low in alcohol. It's great to serve, like, when guests get there to the house, or with an as an aperitif, or with a first course.
Versatile.
Yeah, it's versatile. Pool, beach.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that kind of practicality in a wine.
Yeah.
You know, this is, to me, that's very smart. And yet, I mean, it's not just, hey, by the way. I mean, it's purposeful. It's made in a way that any other wine that you would make. You know, it's not.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you know, we've been talking a lot about, you know, big reds and Cabernet, and you know, a lot of the wines that I make are big and rich and have completely different ideas about them. But I've loved rosé. I've loved the wines of the south of France for a long time. You know, for completely different reasons, and I love making, you know, big Napa Cab.
Yeah.
And that's what I wanted to make with this wine is a serious rosé. I mean, you know, I started making this in 2012 or 13, officially, you know, to sell. I did make a few rosés before then, but just for fun. From Sanier juice, but you know, I think it was 13 that I really started. You know, people. This is before kind of the rosé craze, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
People didn't really know what I was doing, and it was just kind of funny, just because now rosé, of course, is like its own beast. You know,
and a lot of it is just, you know, just because people like to work the category, but this is very intentional to me.
It's very intentional. You know, it wasn't made to kind of blow up into a big brand, or, you know, really try to make a lot of it for a low price. I mean, I've always just wanted to make a really, really good rosé. I mean, it's not cheap. This retails for $35, but I'm still making the same amount of rosé that I did in 2013. I'm not trying to blow this up into a beast. You know, this is. I can only make 475 gallons in my concrete egg. So if I'm just going to stay true to style, I would need to invest a lot more. But I'm perfectly happy just kind of making the best rosé I can every year. And
I absolutely love the back of the label, you guys. You really should try this rosé. So when you buy it, you'll see it. It has the varietal breakdown, which is 84% Grenache and 16 Mourvedre, and it says concrete egg. So in case you forget this, you know, the detail in the conversation, I love it when people disclose this kind of details, because it calibrates you a little bit. It's like, oh, okay.
Right. Like, you know, I'm not making this in, you know, in a big, huge, you know, 1,000,000-gallon tank in Modesto or something. You know, I'm making this in a small concrete egg every year, and that's part of the style of this wine. And you know, it means that I need to price it high to actually make any money on it. But you know, it's a passion project for me. I'm not trying to go crazy with this.
I'm so glad that you explain it, because, you know, if you just look at a price tag and that's all you see, it's like $35 for rosé when there's a flood of them.
Sure.
For, you know, $15 to $20 price point. But it's not the same. It's apple and pineapple comparison. You just explained the production cost, the intentionality, and by the way, the flavor profile. This drinks like a white wine. I mean, it happens to be rosé, but it is really a cool customer here. I absolutely adore it. I'm not a rosé fan. I've disclosed it, so it's no new news. But because a lot of the rosés to me are just not that interesting. A
lot of them are afterthoughts, and a lot of them are just you know, trying to chase a category while it's hot.
Exactly.
And you know, like I said, I mean, I've been making it this way for a long time now. I'm glad I got in front of the train, which is now rosé, but you know, it's just, again, I'm trying to make a wine that I like to drink. You know, wines that I've, you know, in the spirit of wines that I spend money on. You know, being in the wine industry, I actually don't spend a lot of money on wine just because I do a lot of trading and whatnot. But you know, I do spend money on you know, searching out really good rosé. Whether that's domestic or international, because I think a lot of winemakers who are passionate about what they're doing are making really good ones. You know, they're just few and far between right now. Like, you just go to
it's crazy,
big,
right?
big box store, you're going to find a bunch of trash. But
No, it's like it's so sparse. It's such an overpopulated category. It's kind of like we talked about. Maybe in a larger scale, we'll touch upon it later in the podcast. But there's so much noise when it comes to rosé, and it's hard to.
There's a lot of noise. That's for sure. There's a lot of noise in the rosé category. That's for sure. But hopefully, discerning palates prevail.
Yes, please prove us right, because I'm all about people that care about what they drink, and when they pick up a bottle of rosé, please choose a good one. Personal hope that it's Kale, but even if you don't go that route, just don't buy stuff for the sake of buying, just because it's pink. Okay, please, I would be very appreciative of that.
Yeah.
I really hate to pour this out, but. Wow, and it's opening up so nicely. It's gotten more generous as it sat in the glass in the nose.
Yeah, it's warmed up a little bit too. It's gotten more floral.
It's absolutely beautiful, and again, that texture, soft and supple.
Yeah.
And I think we're moving on to Grenache Blanc, which is one of my favorite varieties.
So Grenache Blanc, as you can see from my own brand, I don't really focus on the tried and true or the, ascribe to the mantra that Cab is king and Chardonnay is queen. The wines that really got me interested in the wine industry in the first place were wines that were not necessarily what were normal. I remember early in my career or when I was in college, the point for me wasn't to try to find the best stuff, not to mention that I was also poor at the time, but just to try to find the stuff that was the most different, that I felt like I could learn something from, unique experiences that to try to educate myself.
I'm really loving your perspective on life and conversing on wine, because we're just again talking a little bit earlier about. There's all these conversations about engaging millennial audiences. That seems to be the hot target market. Everyone seems to have something to say about it. And you by a year maybe missed the technical definition, but you were a young person.
Yeah, I'm technically 3 months from being a millennial, right? So I'm September 79. So I've seen other things that say that 79 is in fact a millennial, but I'm right there on the cusp.
You have that perspective, and
I have two younger sisters who are definitely millennials.
Yeah, so not only you, but your siblings, I'm sure, have also things to say.
Yeah.
And for a young person that is kind of curious about wine, but my lord, between the market on wine has grown. There's so much more wine being made, more good wine, but that's another conversation. But just volume. Also different closures, also different, there's cans, there's jugs, there's so many different iterations.
There's a lot of noise.
Yes. But noise doesn't mean good. Yeah. We didn't say good noise, we said noise.
Right.
So what?
We didn't say music, we said noise.
Exactly. So I'm so curious, what would you advise?
Some of it is good music, but the problem is that, it's... there's a lot of, we live in a time that, in general, not just in the wine industry, that there's a lot going on, and there's a lot of things to be distracted by, and there is a lot of people vying for everyone's ears and attention, it's made a really kind of confusing environment, I think.
Yes.
And it's created a lot of noise. Now it seems like in the day, right now, the world we live in is like who's ever shouting loudest is being heard.
It's literally the squeaky wheel world.
Yeah, right, exactly. Like, maybe in the past there was, very few megaphones.
Yeah.
Which didn't feel very democratic.
Yeah.
But now that everyone's got a megaphone, no one can hear anything.
So the age of information really became an age of misinformation, or half information, low information.
Or just information was rising up to the top that wasn't necessarily good information.
Being that you have that generation, what would you suggest, like for a younger person that kind of sort of is interested in wine, maybe sees it around, maybe sees his friends or peers participate, but it's so darn confusing that it's intimidating in that aspect alone, is that you look at a shelf in a grocery store, especially in California, oh my God.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just, if I walk to a grocery aisle, when I go grocery shopping, half the things I see on the shelf, I just don't recognize.
Yeah, which for you is a big statement because you're in that world.
Right, and I'm in the middle of the world, so
yeah.
I can only imagine someone who is not in the wine bubble that I'm in goes down to the grocery store aisle and is like, "What is this?" And whatever, whether it be packaging or whether it be shelf talkers or the newest, hottest rage of this or this celebrity or that celebrity doing this or that. Just like, what is going on?
It's not friendly. What would you suggest they do? Like, if you were to talk to the person that's standing in front of the shelf right now, what would you, if they said, "Hey, dude, what do I do with this?"
Just try to find, try to find some people, not necessarily with the loudest megaphone, but who share your sentiments about wine. I mean, for instance, like listening to this podcast, listening to you. We talk to some people who, or not talk, but you just find, you got to parse the information and find relevant information, whether that's from a publication, or through an online medium, or through a podcast or something. Find some people you trust.
That's really good advice. Thank you for that.
And you don't need to find a lot.
No. And you're a poster child of intellectual curiosity. I mean, a lot of people graduate from Davis every year, and not everyone has your career. I'm looking at a lot of very illustrious bottles, which I can't wait to get into, but you have really made a very successful career in this industry, and I credit you because you ask yourself questions. Again, that critical thinking, that natural curiosity, not just taking things at face value. Hey, pretty label, hey, shelf talker, hey, it's in a box, so, that's kind of cool. No, ask yourself you're going to spend some time drinking this wine, right? It's going to be either by yourself or hopefully with others.
Well, you have limited resources.
Exactly, so use it wisely, right?
Use it wisely and use it, use it in ways that match up with your worldview, what you feel is important, what you're looking for. I mean, it's so easy to get distracted by things. It's just trying to find some things that you speak with your wallet and don't necessarily buy things just because they're the cheapest. Don't buy things because they're the most expensive. Buy them because you either agree with what they're doing, or you agree with, or you really like what they're doing, or speak with your wallet.
That is such sage advice, you guys. I just want to highlight what you're saying. I mean, know your maker.
Know your maker. Yeah, and just it takes time.
Yeah.
But that time spent, listening to a podcast like this, or finding a voice in the wine industry that you trust, using your time that way rather than scrolling.
Yep.
Is time well spent. Is time well spent, right?
Yeah. No,
so.
Well, see, I mean, it's really a pervasive issue, this whole attention span and such, and it's easier to just pollinate. It's harder to go deep, but it's so much more rewarding.
Yeah.
I mean, the wines that you're going to drink as a result, and the conversations it will spur, and the memories it will create, well worth the investment.
Exactly. And it's just about engaging,
Yeah.
Just engaging with your with your time.
Yeah. This Grenache Blanc is so darn delicious.
It's chilling really fresh. So getting back to the wine, the Grenache Blanc, there's I think there's 10 acres actually. So yesterday I just got it. I got it from the PO box, the Grape Crush Report. There's not very much Grenache Blanc planted in the Napa Valley.
Nope.
I sourced 1 acre of it. The last time I checked, I think there was around 10 acres planted. So you're tasting 10% of the Grenache Blanc production in the Napa Valley right here.
It's
most of it's been torn out for Cabernet.
Yeah, economic reality. Sorry, guys, but there's somebody that's highlighting it.
Yeah, I'm highlighting it because I like to drink it. I love the fact that Grenache Blanc is fresh. I love the fact that it has a lot of minerality. It's also, I do not do malolactic fermentation with it, kind of like I would make a Sauvignon Blanc, but it's also got some richness to it.
It does, and
which does not come from barrels because it's all stainless steel, and it does not come from malolactic fermentation because I don't go through malolactic fermentation. So again, this is meant to be fresh, low alcohol, a lot of minerality, but it also has quite a bit of texture to it.
Again, you said it all: texture, savory aspects. It's the kind of wine you can easily drink a bottle of, and I'm not suggesting that you do, but it's just easy to do.
Yes.
Because it is.
Yeah, I mean, we're looking at 12.9% alcohol. Mm-hmm. Again, pH very low. The white, the rosé that I like to make are the wines that I like to drink, which
sensibility.
That's
what speaks to me the most. Those wines are delicious without a doubt, but it's like they make sense.
Yeah, and they're made for a specific reason. Don't get me wrong, I make really great Chardonnay and Sauvignon Blanc for other people, but the point behind this wine was to be extremely fresh, low alcohol, and delicious.
If you guys travel to Europe, that's all you hear all day long. If you go to a winery, the first word that comes up in any conversation is always fresh. Yeah. It is fresh.
Yes.
And you know what? It's a value, and there's a value for a reason, because Europeans drink a lot of wine.
Right.
So they're not going to be able to put away this heavy-handed, voluminous, overwhelming bottle of wine away at lunch like they do. Well, in some regions they do, so it's not.
Sure, but I know what you're saying. It's not meant to, it's not meant to dominate your attention. It's not meant to dominate the food. It's meant to kind of complement a lifestyle.
It's a context wine.
Yeah.
And you really picked up on that, and you've embraced it, and that's what makes this wine unique to me, because I really appreciate that. Some wines need to take center stage. Some wines really should be in a supporting role.
Right. And and we're not trying to punch someone in the face with with a big old heavy white wine here. We're trying to be fresh, be textured, have it accompany food, be able to drink a half a bottle at lunch and still be able to function.
Absolutely.
To have something really refreshing at the beach, at the pool. Like, this is summertime wine.
No, and I love all those functionalities that you just described, but I also love the fact that you're not just drinking something that happens to be a wine. I love the fact that you're drinking that intent and that, very purposeful winemaking, and the fact that it's made by the hand of somebody who is actually quite experienced and very good at what they do. It's not just, hey, we have a hole in our program and we'll toss a rosé or a white in there because, we'd like our mailing list members to have a complete package when they order from us. That is nothing of the sort. This is you taking the time and the expense and doing it right.
Well, thank you. That's what we're trying to do with that wine. So
I always hate moving on because every single wine that I've tasted from you merit a lot of individual attention. But I know that I'm looking at 4 more bottles. So
I mean, there's the 2 bottles that I have next. Maybe we'll go through those more quickly.
Yep.
They're 2 wines that you're familiar with.
Yes.
We've been making the Kick Ranch since 2009. We've been making the Stagecoach Syrah Grenache since 2012. So those are wines that we've had in the portfolio for a long time. But then the last 2 wines we'll taste are our newest releases.
That's so exciting.
The Hyatt and the Magah. So.
Oh my goodness, I can't even wait. This is such a special treat. Thank you. I have been tasting your wines for several years now, and when I first discovered them, I was like, I've always thought about Rhone varietals as dominating in many ways. Paso Robles and such like that. Even though the largest production there is a Cab, but I've kind of thought of them as a Rhone country. In Napa, let's face it, it's a Cab country, and it's more of an occasional indulgence.
Sure.
But the moment that I discovered you, and I know you made wine in Napa from Sonoma and Napa sources, I was like, this person really is doing it so much justice.
Well, Napa and Sonoma are fantastic places to grow just about anything.
Yeah.
Including Cabernet in Napa, including Pinot Noir in Sonoma, including Chardonnay in Sonoma, including all the wines that you're probably most familiar with. But it's also an amazing place to grow pumpkins.
Yeah.
It's also an amazing place to grow fruits and vegetables. It's also an amazing place to grow Rhone varieties. Now, I would say that the reason why Cab is king in Napa is partially because those are amazing wines.
Yes.
But also partially because they wanted, there has been a quorum of marketing that has been pushing this for decades.
Absolutely, it's the identity of the region.
It's the identity of the region.
It's impossible to walk it back. So.
Right, and it was just interesting that I just came back from France because in France it's actually dictated in the law about exactly what varieties you can grow in which regions and how you can grow them and all this kind of stuff, which I believe is one of the reasons why we have so many French winemakers in California or in the U.S. is because we can do whatever the heck we want to do.
Yep.
Which is, I hope there's other people like me that continue to kind of push us out of our comfort zones, and so it doesn't become such a monoculture in Napa and Sonoma.
Yeah.
But I firmly believe that the Rhone varieties don't just do well in Paso Robles, they do extremely well in Napa and Sonoma when planted in the right places. So it's been kind of one of the tenets of our brand, Kale Wines, is to really showcase the different terroirs expressed through the Rhone varieties.
No, and you've performed to a very high standard. I happen to have tasted, quite a few Rhone varietals through my wine career, and so I'm pretty wedded to that category in general. And having tasted yours for the first time, I was immensely impressed. And I really didn't know who you were then, but I just knew that you showed up in a bottle. I knew that what you were producing was significant. From the moment I just took my first sip.
So this is 2013 Kick Ranch.
Mm-hmm.
Syrah Grenache 70-30, 2013 vintage. So we're tasting an older vintage.
That's a big boy.
Yeah, it's a big. It is a rich. It's extremely savory.
It's velvety, just the texture.
Velvety texture.
Yes.
I also use quite a bit of whole cluster, so So there's a carbonic kind of a freshness to it.
Wow, the nose on this, it's kind of crazy.
The conclusion of this interview can be found in the next podcast, already available for your download. Thanks again for tuning in to the official podcast of Palate Exposure, featuring Ilona Thompson.